What's good, everyone? I'm back with a new episode featuring an underappreciated gem from the Asian horror boom, 2005's Reincarnation. Kate returns to the pod for one of the original 8 films to die for from the After Dark HorrorFest, in this, the 45th episode of Murders with Mertens. Hello, horror fan, best friends, and ghoulish knights, and welcome to the 45th episode of Murders with Mertens. I am your host, Joe, and this is a podcast about horror. Time-bending ghost stories, cosmic horror, body horror, folk horror, sci-fi horror, the horror-adjacent, thrillers, the psychologically terrifying, scary films in general. Each episode, I sit down with a guest and discuss one of their favorite scary films so we can gush about everything that makes it just so damned cool. Viewers, thank you for the support. Don't forget to like, share, and leave a comment below. It certainly helps with the engagement. If you haven't already, maybe consider subscribing to the channel if you are so inclined. It's free to do, and you look cool doing it. Audio listeners, the show is also available on podcast services around the world like Apple Podcasts and Spotify, so don't forget to leave a rating when you stop by. 5 stars is always appreciated. But enough of all that housekeeping, as I have the great pleasure of welcoming back for her third appearance, one Kate Matlen-Remer. Hello, Kate. Welcome back.
Hey, Joe. Thank you so much for having me. It's always a pleasure being here.
Well, I'm glad to have you back. We've had fun talking films before, and it's always good to catch up anyways.
Definitely.
But yeah. What you been up to? Anything fun?
Just taking on some new photography. That's sort of my new pet project.
Nice.
So I've been doing that. Yeah.
Nice.
How about you?
Just trying to get back into this thing. You know, I had a little bit of a little bit of the imposter syndrome going on over the past few months, a little bit of the, I'm too tired. I got this going on. I got that going on. But finally kicking my own ass to get back into this. And well, here we are.
Awesome.
Yeah. But today we're revisiting a film that we discovered together roughly 15 years ago via Blockbuster. And the After Dark HorrorFest films, or like 8 films to die for, or whatever it was called at that time. But this is 2005's Reincarnation, directed by Takashi Shimizu and written by him and Masaki Adachi. I'm horrible with Japanese names. It's I'm not so good with them, but ultimately. Yeah, definitely feels like one that kind of fell under the radar in that Asian horror boom of the aughts, doesn't it? But Kate, why Reincarnation?
Well, there's so much. It's a very well layered film, as we discussed before we started recording. Coupled with creepy dolls, some creepy kids. We've got some cool like snuff film found footage vibes. We've got a cool twist at the end. It's just a really well done film that I think is super under. I don't know. I mean, I don't know that it ever like got the fame or press that it really deserved. It's just a great film.
I really don't hear people talk about this one, which is unfortunate. This is kind of a cool movie. It's not kind of cool. It's cool. It's it's not really got anyone that I'm super familiar with in it. I'm not really familiar with the director's other work, but yeah, it's just, it definitely fits that vibe of, like you said, the creepy kids, the creepy dolls. I feel like they did the creepy kid thing quite a bit especially in those J horror films, like The Ring and The Grudge and, stuff like that. But I mean, who doesn't like a good creepy kid? I mean, we were also talking a little bit before we were recording, The Omen has a prequel out now, and supposedly some people actually like it. So, hey, that's a plus. But yeah, creepy kids, I think are they're evergreen, right? It's nothing like being creeped out by dolls and creepy kids. So yeah, this maybe just because it didn't get that American remake. Maybe that's why we don't hear about this one quite so much. I don't know. I think that was a lot of the drive with, people's love of a lot of Asian horror cinema from the time period, just because, okay, they would see the American version and then want to check out the original or something like that. Right. But yeah, just absolutely shout out to After Dark HorrorFest, because I know we tore through a ton of those things, and it wasn't just that original 8 films to die for. It's they came out with a ton of them over a brief number of years there, and a lot of them were pretty decent. There's some not so great ones in there, but this is absolutely a gem from that period. So I am so happy that you have brought this one for us to talk about. As we said, we had both burned through this several times over recent weeks here, and it's a fun one to do that with for sure. So I think we should probably just jump into it.
Let's do it.
Yeah. Well, we start things off with that awesome Toho logo. You're always know that you're in for a good time, whether it's a kaiju film or anime or really anything else. They're one of the largest studios in Japan, but the logo is always cool. I don't know that they've ever updated it, but
really?
Yeah, it's looked the same in plenty of old films. It's, it just, yeah, always has that look. And that's cool because it's a very like 60s, 70s vibe to that logo. And I enjoy that. But we really start off with is a group of schoolgirls at a cafe discussing what they were in their past lives. They've got some kind of an app or a website on one of the girls' phones, and they're using that to talk about it. And I think one of them was a penguin and the other one was a defeated samurai. And when it comes time for the third girl, she snatches the phone away to try to play with it there, but the phone's just kind of dead. And, she's, punching away at the keys and everything. And she takes another look. Well, rather before that, there's this puff of air that ruffles her hair, and she kind of looks around and, but yeah, impatiently then grabs the phone, and the screen is showing her reflection, but as she's turning it around, then it becomes the reflection of this adult man with glasses, and kind of startles her a little bit, right? She looks around the cafe to see if he's standing there, and well, nothing. And then we go right from here to this middle-aged dude just kind of having a drink alone on a park bench. I don't know if it's like an energy shot or a little coffee drink or what, but at this point we're like, what the hell's going on? Because we're not getting much of a story. We're just getting these little vignettes, but he stands up to throw away the little bottle, and he's surprised by this very tall man in a pale blue shirt and kind of gray skin standing next to the trash can, who wasn't there when he got up and walked up to the can. And he kind of looks up, and the guy is so tall that like the bulk of his face is out of frame. And then the guy just sort of walks off. And when the man in the suit looks around, there's absolutely nobody there. Okay. Then we get a little bit more with this guy. He's back at his office, and he's letting the other passengers out of an elevator, and he's clearly a little spooked by everything that happened at the park. And of course, he's the last one left as the doors close, like you do. And he's kind of mopping his forehead with a handkerchief, and he backs up into the man in the blue shirt, slowly kind of turning his head around and looking up at the guy. And then the camera just tracks to the open elevator and the man in the suit standing still alone again, but then the doors close in front of him. And then we move on to another little vignette. So we've got a public restroom with a man splashing water on his face instead of washing his hands because, he just walked out of a stall. Thought that was kind of gross. But he looks up to see his face changing in the mirror to the gray face of someone else and kind of startling him. And then we move to him in his truck. He's a truck driver and he's driving down this dark road. He's paying kind of more attention to his face in the rear view than he is the road itself. We hear a news report about a film adaptation of this famous hotel massacre. But he just turns the channel of the radio. And of course, when he's looking down to do this, he doesn't notice this ghostly bellhop kind of shambling around in the middle of the road. And he just runs that ghoul down and screeches to a halt. And he gets out to sort of inspect things and look around. And, well, he doesn't see anybody. And he doesn't see any damage to the front of the truck or anything. But when he looks underneath the truck, yeah, he finds the same face that he saw in the mirror, and that guy is wedged deep under there, and he kind of stumbles back and the wind picks up and he looks around and he sees all these faces in the darkness. I think that's kind of fun. He's absolutely terrified. He hurries back into the truck, but he's unable to get it started. Kind of scoots back into the compartment behind the seats, kind of cowering in fear, only to be surrounded by the dead. And we are introduced to our first three of, I don't, how do I want to describe them? They're basically they're reincarnated versions of some of these dead folks. I don't know. I keep referring to them as the dead throughout my notes, but I don't know. What do you think about these first three little introductions here?
I mean, I think they're intriguing. I don't, until you see the rest of the movie, there's sort of, I don't know, a little boring. But it's okay. It ends up making sense as you go along.
Oh, absolutely. I think it's one of those things where I think it respects your intelligence enough to say, hey, we don't need to spell this out for you. But
right.
Also, I just feel like there could have been a little bit more cohesion, as far as what's going on here. I don't think it's bad. I just think it's, it's just, it's a little different. And I don't know. I just kind of wish we had a little bit more inkling of what's going on at this point, but we definitely get to it.
Yeah, I think it just was intended to just give a flavor of that there's layering starting to happen between people in current day and spirits from the past, that there's some connection.
Right. It's it's the one in the very beginning. She doesn't even get really assaulted by any of the dead folks or any of that. So that's that's what I find a little off by it. I don't know, but we'll get there. We cut to director Matlen-Remer. He's ignoring calls from his producer while chain smoking like crazy and working away on his film about a famous hotel massacre from 35 years prior. He's kind of shuffling copies of news articles around, and the camera shifts to a perspective from behind him, showing the 11 victims' photos hung on his wall. And we get that fun red rubber ball bouncing behind him and out of his office door. I love a lot of these transitions that they have, how it shifts between, the present day and what might be the past or might be just some vision of the past. It's, I love that it's very up in the air in a lot of these scenarios. But yeah, that ball bounces behind him and out his office door, and it transitions right into the hotel hallway and then bouncing against the door of room 227, which slowly opens. And then we get the perspective from the camera entering the room, showing us about 35 years of abandonment and neglect and one hell of a creepy doll. And this is where the doll's face just kind of crumbles inward. Oh, yeah. We get that wonderful recorded doll's voice saying together forever. And here's where we get our title card and opening credits. Yeah, it's I think the score from the film is something that I didn't really appreciate as much until recent rewatches. I think it's pretty decent as horror scores go.
It is.
Yeah. And we go from the credits then to auditions for the film. They're casting this unknown role at this point, but they're looking for, probably like early 20 somethings for this one. We've got an actor talking about her dream of playing a role where she's killed because she was killed in a past life, she says. Everybody just kind of stares at her. It's funny because this character's name is Yuka, and that is the stage name of the main character in the film. So that's not confusing. Next up, we shift over to our heroine, Nagisa, but she's kind of quiet. She doesn't have anything to add to the conversation at all. But then we get her agent or manager. I just keep referring to him as her agent because it's, kind of the same thing. But he tries to lift her up on the train ride home. Unfortunately, she's distracted by this ghostly figure of a little girl with a doll staring at her on the train. Meanwhile, he's not seen a thing. He's just kind of droning on and on about how she can improve her chances. And she turns back to him and then looks back to find the little girl is gone. They're at a stop and the doors have opened, but they're continuing on. She looks down to find the little girl like much closer to her this time, giving her a little bit of a start. And this is where the doors open and the girl falls through the gap between the train and the platform. And then she's just kind of staring back up at Nagisa. And yeah, and it works for the film. I really love how creeped out she is and transfixed by the little girl. But I also find it funny that she's not screaming like, "Oh my God, there's this little girl that fell on the tracks." There's not that kind of reaction. No, there's I'm just aghast. There's this little girl staring up at me from the crack here. But yeah, her agent grabs her shoulder, asking her if she's all right. And he's clearly more concerned that she wasn't really listening to him, that she was kind of spacing out there. She does a lot of the spacing out in this film. But like you do, right? We move on to the director taking notes while looking at newspaper clippings and an older woman bringing him a box, thanks her for it, and asks her permission to open it up, which she does, but we don't see what's inside. And there's this odd little transition between him in her home accepting this thing and cutting to his office again, where again, chain smoking away. He's studying the casting information, for his prospective lead. And he's, banging out some notes in his notebook computer there. And we see the little girl run behind him. First of all, she stands up. She was on the floor doing some drawings, and she runs off, and suddenly she's back in the hotel as it was 35 years ago, running through the hallways, and she finds her doll and picks it up. And all of a sudden she finds herself back in the present in Nagisa's bedroom, kind of watching her sleep. Because there's nothing like a little ghost girl watching you sleep, right? Yeah. Nagisa wakes up and kind of rolls over. The little girl's no longer there watching her. There's nobody there. She gets up, walks around, turns on a light, kind of looks around a little bit, and then is startled by her cell phone going off. It's her agency calling. The directors sent her the script. So, they don't know if things are, really final or anything, but they figure she's in. So they kind of celebrate. They're walking through a parking garage again. and celebrating the accomplishment. And she expresses, her she's a little bewildered, a little sense of deja vu, I think, because, and he's like, well, you don't know that this actually happened in the 70s. This professor killed his family as well as some staff and guests at a hotel before he killed himself. And he mentions how he was a little kid when it happens, or when it happened rather, but it was before she was born. Again, a little on the nose there, but it's, I'll let it slide. We cut to the older woman again. She's reading through the script and wiping away some tears. And future spoilers, as I'm not 100% where it's revealed, but this is the professor's wife. And at this point, they're just kind of implying it because we look over and we see on this on a table or credenza or something, there's a photo of the family with the little kids, and she's in it. And you've got some incense burning nearby, so clearly it's something of a memorial for the dead there. But and we're back to the agent dropping Nagisa off at her apartment building. She seems a little drunk here, right?
It definitely does.
Okay. Yeah. So I think they went out like celebrating the win, because a win for her is a win for him too, right? But yeah, she bursts into her apartment and she's like, I'm home. And flips on the lights and she pulls out the script and she's like, ta-da, as it comes out of the envelope. So yeah, I think she's a little tuned up. But she sits down on the couch and she's just kind of distractedly flipping through the script there. And we get the little girl running behind her, and she kind of notices this time and, does the thing where you whip around in the wrong direction and completely miss the person and looks back the other way. And next thing you know, she suddenly finds herself like in the mist outside of the hotel looking around. And she snaps to on her couch again because it's the sound of her door chime going off. And, she walks up to the door and says the thing you're never supposed to say in a horror film, who is it? And she looks through the peephole and it's nothing but ghosts staring back at her. Yeah, I think the one thing that I don't like about this bit is it doesn't okay, how does she ultimately react to that? What does she do after that? It just immediately cuts to what is probably the next day as everybody's going to the set. I don't know.
Right.
I like the spooks though. I think it's fun.
Yeah, a little jump scare when they start
yeah. And it's very 90s music video around a fisheye lens. And yeah, it's good times. But yeah, we move from here to this, I guess, next day on the set where we've got one of the producers explaining to the actors how the film is based on true events, how he'd like them to review the characters' bios that they're posting up on boards around them. And, it kind of seems to me like this would be something that if you were auditioning for specific roles or something, wouldn't you already have something of a bio on these people? I don't know. It's the order of things is a little confusing to me. Because I think it's shortly after this, that the director comes in and actually announces which parts people got. So not everybody that was there was even getting a role in the film. It's strange that everybody would be on this set, but I don't know. Maybe it was the time period. Maybe that's how a lot of Japanese films play out. I could not say. But it just, again, the order of things felt very off to me. But yeah, you've got news clippings from the time period with all the different photos of the dead and, who they were and, what happened to them and everything. But yeah, we got the director saying a few words, how he intends to, I put here in my notes, he intends to go full giallo and not show the killer, because that's really common in that kind of genre where you see like the gloved hands of the killer and from their perspective, but it's not till the very end of the film that you officially see who it is or whatever.
Right.
But yeah, he doesn't really want to showcase the killer even. He wants to focus on the victims and, how they lived and, what happened to them. And, he wants to somehow lay their souls to rest with the creation of this film. And this is where he reveals the actual casting. Nagisa is revealed to be cast as the aged up daughter of the killer. And she is totally spaced out again from the night before, because they have to say her name like 2 or 3 times before she finally stands up. You got her agent behind her, like, what the fuck are you doing? But she, accepts the role and stands up and moves on. And next they bring out these scale models of the set that they intend to build there at the studio. And, again, future spoilers for the film, but man alive, do they ever build that set quickly too. I don't know what kind of a time period this film is meant to take place in, but it feels like everything happens very, very quickly.
In like a day.
Yeah. Just like a couple of days even. But she is, Nagisa, she's transfixed on the images of the character that she's going to portray. And then she looks down and she sees the picture of the father, the college professor, and she is super unnerved by his image. And she kind of turns around and walks over to the scale model, and you get a little bit of mist flying by it. And then you get this super cool transition from the scale model to the actual hotel. And I love it. It's really well done.
It is.
They just, there's this like kind of crossfade with the cameras going, in the same movements and everything. And it's perfect. And Nagisa, she finds herself walking through the front door of the actual hotel and finding the doll in the entryway. But she hears footsteps. And it's this other young woman walking up to the hotel behind her. And well, she freaks out and she books it inside, and the new girl doesn't see her. The new girl bends down and picks up the doll instead. And we get the new girl just waking up in class. She's at this lecture about past lives and reincarnation and the more realistic explanations for the phenomenon. And, her boyfriend's like, pay attention. Hey, it was your idea to take the class. And it's kind of funny. But yeah, the professor's going on about how, experiences that you've had over your lives, stories that you've read, all these little snippets basically combine in your brain to give you this idea that there are experiences that you lived before. But she's kind of
clearly does not believe in reincarnation.
No, not at all. And he's talking about it from a very psychological standpoint. And I think she's taking the class more because she's something of a believer herself. The boyfriend's along for the ride. And as they leave the class, she's telling him about this recurring dream of this hotel that she's never been to, she says. And the boyfriend just kind of brushes it off, and then he's more interested in grabbing lunch, and he just kind of leaves her there. It was weird. But we go back to Nagisa. She's in rehearsal, and we've got some of the other actors griping about her getting all the attention. There's like the one bitchy girl who in particular has, kind of has it in for Nagisa. There's other stuff that she does later in the film, but she's griping about it. And another person brings up that they're actually all going on a trip to the hotel. And somebody's like, yeah, it's true. My agent was telling me about it. And they're like, why do we have to go? It's, why not just the crew? Aren't they just going to, get information for the sets and stuff like that? And they're all kind of snapped back to reality by the direction that the director is giving Nagisa on the set, and those "you might die." Yeah, yeah. And they're all like kind of shocked by it. The music starts to swell. It's a scene where she's supposed to be walking down the hallway, sort of fleeing from her father. And it's a scene that gets repeated over and over in this film because it's about all they ever end up filming.
Right.
But she turns around as the music picks up, and we see a figure standing over the shoulder and a bit behind from the director, and finally comes into focus, and it's the professor. And Nagisa lets out this blood-curdling scream. And to me, it's pretty close, not quite there with Cheryl Lee from Twin Peaks. Now she could scream, but yeah, the director calls cut, and Nagisa just absolutely collapses. Everyone rushing to her aid there, and yeah, it's good. I like it. I like that her world is crumbling around her in this film. And there's good reason for it. We're going to get there. But we cut to her at a restaurant with her agent, and he's doing his level best to tell her that she has to go with everyone to this hotel. You know, she's clearly freaked out by everything that's been happening. But, you know, she's like, this is a bad idea. And then she starts like spiraling, and everybody at the restaurant's looking at her. And the agent's just kind of brushing things off, but also telling her, hey, you know, this is important for your career. This is a really big opportunity for you. And we just immediately shift from here to the bus ride to the abandoned hotel. And does it look to you like the town below the hotel is also abandoned?
Completely abandoned.
Yeah. The hotel must have been like the lifeblood of the town. And with it shutting down, everybody probably moved away. Something like that, at least. They all pile out the bus, and this is when the jealous, bitchy actor and Nagisa bump into each other. And she's like, watch where you're going. And Nagisa completely out of it again. They head up to the hotel. One of the producers ends up cutting his hand on the gate. You know, it's nothing like going to a haunted place or abandoned place and shedding some blood there. You know, bad stuff's going to happen, right? It's like Hellraiser when the guy cuts himself on the nail in the attic. Oh yeah, it all goes downhill from there. But yeah, the director takes them on a bit of a tour, explaining you know, where all their individual characters actually met their fates. He wants them to, you know, get a real feel for everything and, you know, just experience the place. And while they're there, they're having everybody kind of get into position exactly how their characters had died. And they're taking like reference photos for later, for when they film stuff back on set. And as the photos are being snapped, Nagisa, she sees these flashes of the original dead folks, and it's pretty effective. I like it. As they're all going up the stairs and they're discussing a couple more of the fallen, I think it's the couple that died. She almost has a bit of a fainting spell again, but you know, she kind of starts collapsing into somebody and wakes herself up. And well, she goes to one of the restrooms to sort of freshen herself up as a crew member stands outside sort of waiting for her. And when she walks out, the hotel is as it was in the 70s. She's back.
And that crew member's not there anymore.
Right. And she sees a bit of a blood trail on the stairs right there by the restroom. And she starts to go up, and she catches out of the corner of her eye a figure of somebody limping away. And you can't quite see who it was until she follows. And it turns out that it's the little boy, the brother, the son of the professor. So back in the present, We've got the director finding the boy's rubber ball, and the crew member coming back, and he's like, I can't find Nagisa. And everybody kind of wondering, okay, well, she's got to be in the hotel, but we should probably look for her. Back in the past, maybe, she follows the little boy, and she ends up finding the professor following the kid, and he's filming all of this with a Super 8 camera. Because, it was the 70s, and the man ends up grabbing the kid as he tries to run one direction and dragging him off before stabbing him in the chest. And the kid, dies. And the guy's standing over the kid, filming everything. And she starts to freak out seeing all this. And just as she starts running off, the professor, you can see that he kind of notices her there because he starts to turn towards her, but we don't see him following. No, she runs down the hall. You hear the camera whirring, and you hear the whirring coming closer, right? It's perfect. I really like that. That's super effective. And she tries to enter room 237, which is a very nice shining nod there, because has not a good room at the Overlook Hotel. But she ends up running into room 227 because she's more of a Jack Hay fan. And she, hey, I see you laughing there at my dumb joke. She hides in the closet because when she enters the room, there's nobody there, even though she had. It's confusing, but she ends up hiding in the closet, and she hears somebody enter the room, and it's the man, the professor. He finds her. He slides the thing open. He kind of reaches for her, but she slinks back into the corner, only for the other door to open. And this time it's the director, and she's back in the present. Yeah, it's good. It works. I love good hiding in the closet scene. And let's see here. He explains to her that, hey, this is the room where your character specifically was killed, in this closet. And he realizes at that point that she kind of senses things. But they don't have a conversation about that at all. We just cut back to the young student that we were introduced to. She needs help on this report that she's doing on reincarnation, and her boyfriend has arranged a meeting for her with his friend, who just happens to be the actor from earlier in the film who didn't get the role, but believes in past lives. Well, this young student, she's very, very jealous that he's got a friend who's an wannabe actress, and boy, her jealousy is just, it's out there big time in these scenes. Yep. Oh yeah. Yeah. Which is funny because she actually becomes somewhat friendly with this girl, even though their the time together is very brief. But the actress, her name is Yuka, she suggests that they go do some research, and we cut back to the studio where there's just this brief little ceremony to bless the production as they're about to finally start filming, and we just see Nagisa being uneasy again. That's kind of her shtick throughout the rest of the film. But then we cut back to the library where Yuka reveals that she thinks that she was the maid who was strangled at the hotel in her past life. And she takes off her scarf to reveal this birthmark on her neck that looks like bruising from a rope. She's like, it's kind of unfortunate for an actress. It's gotta say, but and then she gets a phone call. Go ahead.
Well, she also mentions too that it's been getting darker lately.
Yes.
For whatever reason. It was light when she was born, but it's been getting darker.
Yes. I like that as well. And she gets a phone call at this point, and she excuses herself to go take it, and she sort of wanders off into the stacks where she can have a little privacy. And love the shot of above her, the doll sitting on top of one of the racks looking down at her.
The head like slowly turning as she's moving.
The creaking of the neck. But yeah, not just the doll, but I love all the little touches of ghosts and backgrounds and stuff in this film. It's fun. But yeah, we've got I think her name is Yayoi. She's the student. She's continuing researching the massacre, reading through these old news clippings. And this is where it's revealed that the professor's wife was the sole survivor. And then we get that creaking of the doll's neck. That's where it comes in. I love it because it's not a smooth movement. It's, you know, like plenty of toys that you've had in your life, you know, when you go to, you know, adjust part of the figure or the doll or whatever, it's like this click, click, click. And yeah, but it's more of a creak. And the doll sort of knocks some books down. And Yuka doesn't look up. She just looks down at the books to go pick them up. And she says to the person on the phone, "Oh, some books fell." And she goes and picks these up and goes to put them on the shelf. And as she looks through the racking, she sees all these ghosts looking back at her. And she kind of backs up in a start to the rack behind her, and we get some ghostly arms reaching through and grabbing her from behind. I like that quite a bit. I am pretty sure that was in the trailer for this thing, and one of the things that absolutely sold us on this movie. So the arms basically grab her around the neck and the rest of her body and haul her upwards, and it's this perfect transition of her feet moving out of frame just as Yayoi rounds the corner, and the cell phone drops and hits the floor right in that moment as well. And you hear the voice of the caller on the other end saying, "Hey, where are you? Okay, I'm hanging up now." And that's it. It's a good little scene. I love creepy stuff in libraries. I think Ghostbusters set me up for that from a very young start. But yeah, it's good. So Yuka is no longer in the picture, and we cut to Nagisa dreaming of standing in the town and the little girl telling her, you know, together forever, which is what the doll says. And she snaps awake from there, but she's in the bed of room 227 with the closet opening up, and it's the doll's hand reaching out and sliding the closet door open, but then darkness, and then the little girl holding the doll come forward from sort of the opposite corner of the closet. I like that a lot. And there's probably some more together forever at this point. I think it actually is like repeating almost on a loop.
Yeah.
And then she wakes up for real this time at home. And that is one of my absolute favorite tropes in horror films. The dream within a dream within a dream. Yes. I love that so much. I love the questioning of reality that comes with that. It's all very, very effective for me. So anytime that shows up in a film, I'm happy.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it's also interesting because I think at some point we learned that the title of the movie that they're filming is Memories, and there's this question of, you know, all of the different sort of layers that you're seeing. Is it real? Is it current time? Is it a memory? Are we actually back in 1970? Like, which layer are you in? And there's always this question of that throughout the movie. And so like the double dream within a dream is just more of that. Like, what layer, where are we? What layer are we in?
Yep. Yep, that's very good. And this is so funny because my prior episode was on Mike Flanagan's Oculus, and there's a very, very similar thing going on in that film. I don't know how familiar you are with that film, but it takes place in the early 2000s, and then roughly 10, 11 years later, around like 2012, 2013, something like that. And you've got the adult versions in the present and the child versions in the past, and a lot of this stuff is interweaving and you don't know who's in what time at certain points. It just adds to that sense of unease for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see here. As she wakes up, she also finds a Super 8 camera under her pillow. Where the fuck did that come from?
Pretty cool, actually, though. Cool.
It is. But, the whole thing about, at some point in the film, they talk about how the professor had filmed himself committing these murders, but the tape was, the actual film was missing. Yeah. So where did that come from? Maybe she found it when they were at the hotel.
Mm-hmm.
And she threw it in her bag, but didn't realize that she did because, shit's happening to her. That could be. I would buy that explanation more so than it just magically appearing under her pillow. But yeah. From here, we go back to the studio where she's confronting the director about his intentions with the film. Because her life is kind of spiraling out of control at this point. And this is where he brings out the box with the creepy doll and shows her. And he's like, hey, your character was holding this as she was killed, and all of her final, everything is probably trapped in this doll or something along those lines. Yeah. And then we move right from here to Yayoi driving to meet the wife of the professor. And we see her saying a little prayer for the dead. And the older lady, she serves her some tea and they talk. And this is where Yayoi drops out or whips out this drawing that she made as a little girl of the hotel that she's never been to. And she's standing there in the drawing with another little girl who is clearly the older woman's daughter. The wife, she finds that fairly unsettling. And this is where she brings out her husband's notes. And there's that wonderful phrase of the flesh is but a vessel. And she's convinced that he was trying to do some type of experiment at the hotel. And he sure was. We've got Nagasa's agent. He's had the film from the camera worked up so that they can actually watch it. And she doesn't have time to mess with it because she's got to go to set. But he gets curious. And Yayoi, she's ignoring a phone call from her boyfriend. He's leaving her a voicemail about Yuka being missing. And she is clearly driving off to the hotel. Back to rehearsals on the set. Right around here is where everything starts coming together in the film, right? We get the very, very confusing back and forth between three different perspectives and, multiple times and everything else. And Yayoi gets to the hotel right as the agent starts watching the film and the crew actually starts filming. Yayoi finds the doll at the front door and is immediately...
And it's the same shot that we saw earlier.
Yep. From her dream, yes. And she is confronted by the dead approaching her from behind, but they don't attack. However, they're just wandering, kind of shambling into the hotel, and this is where she recognizes Yuka there at the back of the group, and she tries to kind of wake her up, but no avail. And we see all the dead as they enter the hotel. They all kind of wander off to sort of find their places, which is so funny because yes, they're finding their places of their past lives that were killed, because these are all the modern reincarnations of the people who died in the 70s. But it's also like actors taking their places, which is funny because it's a film about filming a film. And again, all the cool layers in this shit. I love it. But Yayoi is still trying to follow Yuka, but we go back to the Super 8 film, and we see that the agents just get into the part. Earlier we had seen some snippets where it all feels fairly innocent. The professor's filming his kids running around the town below the hotel. But now we've gotten to the part where the professor is confronting his children in the bathroom of the hotel room, and he's about to attack them with a knife, but his wife shows up. It seems like she wasn't originally part of this family trip, because she goes to the hotel and is talking to the staff about her husband possibly staying there. It's so weird. And she's the one that
and asking like what room they're in.
Yeah. I found that a little odd, because she says earlier to Yayoi about how it was like the first family trip that they had ever taken. And but you weren't there. It's so, she also mentions how this was, her thinking is that this is, her husband's experiment, and, maybe he had planned on doing all this stuff and just didn't want her there. I don't know. But yes, we see from the film's perspective, the wife getting attacked, and then we cut back to Yayoi following Yuka through the hotel. She sees her go into her room. She enters the room only to find her strung up just like the maid who was hung. She witnesses the rest of the dead sort of collapsing into place where their past lives fell. And then we get the doll letting out another "Together Forever." And this is where Yayoi is taken as well. She's basically just killed from fright or whatever this force is. But yes, she dies. And then back to filming as Nagisa stumbles through the halls. The set transitions into the hotel itself. And I love it because we get the camera following her with the crew behind her. And, we see around the corner, the opening in the set where, the hallway doesn't continue on. It's just, you see all the lights and just the rest of the warehouse and everything. And we cut back to her and the director and the crew behind, and everyone starts to fade around the director, and she freaks out and takes off. But now that hallway is fleshed out and it's fully the hotel. That's very good. And the director is sort of taken at this point as well, and he shambles forward, and she feels like she's being chased by him. And he ends up catching up to her and actually passing her and collapsing into place because, surprise, he's actually the reincarnation of the little boy. And that's why he always had the red ball. Hint, 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 right? And one by one, all the rest of the dead start becoming their past selves. And Nagisa sees the director, stabbed by the professor, and again becomes a little boy. And this is where she's like, "Oh no, I'm next." And the Super 8 film continues to mirror what is happening. Nagisa, she follows the professor into room 227. And when she enters, she doesn't see anybody there. And this is where she opens the closet door to find Yayoi, and now she begins to fully understand as Yayoi transforms into the little girl. And Nagisa's like, oh no, I get it. And she runs. She finds shelter, however, in the room of the hanged maid. And this is creepy. The maid starts like shaking and falls off the rope and on top of her. And all around the hotel, the dead are starting to rise up and sort of shamble after Nagisa. And then she's sort of backed into this corner, and we get the very, very on the nose shift of her image and the professor. As if you didn't fully understand before. Yes, she is the reincarnation of the professor. But she snaps out of this little reverie and grabs like a light fixture to break through some glass and escape out of the hotel. And she runs off into the town. And we've got the Super 8 film showing the townsfolk running away from the professor, who is probably covered in blood at this point. So, run away they should. And again, everything's in the old film is mirroring what is happening right now because she's stumbling through the town. It's great. She takes shelter in this upper floor of a shop, and she can hear the moaning of all the dead all around her. And she sort of backs up into like a mirror or like a picture frame or something like that and breaks it. And she starts cowering and screaming, but stopping when she hears the creaking of the stairs. And it looks like it's the little girl at the end of the hall at first, but it's revealed, nope, it's the doll standing upright.
Didn't this feel a little bit like a nod to The Ring? Like her head
the
was
hair
down
and everything, yeah.
Like coming up. That it just felt a little like The Ring to me.
Yep. That's okay. It works. And you get the little sort of animated footsteps of the doll walking forward, and it's kind of picking up
like creaking kind of.
Yeah. And she picks up a piece of broken glass to defend herself and looks at it. Meanwhile, in the film, the professor is holding his knife out to defend himself, his bloody knife. And he looks at the knife and she looks at the glass, and he sees, well, first she sees his reflection in the glass as she's looking at herself, and his eyes get really wide because he's shocked. And because when he was filming this, he saw her in the reflection of the knife. But the agent is also seeing this as he's watching the film, and he is shocked as well. And he lets out this.
It's so interesting too. I wish that they had just used this specific shot to like be the thing where you get that like
final
I wish that they hadn't flashed his face in the hotel, right? Like this would have been such a more artful way of giving away the twist.
Yep, absolutely. That if you didn't understand what was happening from the reveal that she is not the little girl, that it was that Yayoi was the little girl, and she's standing over her. Okay, that's a really big hint right there. But then the final reveal of that twist, would have been so much better with the reflections. I mean, I don't hate it how it all played out, but Yeah, that would have been a slight improvement as far as I'm concerned as well. Yeah.
I also love too that like there's the gender flip, right? Like for the other characters, they were all, I think, like same gender reincarnation, and like it was cool that this was like a different age, different, different gender.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, I thought that was fun too. Yeah, it's interesting. In a lot of Asian languages, there's not like gendered pronouns. It's just isn't a thing. It's all from context. And
right.
yeah, that kind of speaks volumes, doesn't it?
Mhm.
So yeah, we got the agent letting out this little questioning Nagisa as he, sees her reflection in the knife, and you see the arterial spray as the professor slits his own throat. But you also see in the film that there is nothing down the hallway. This is just him ending it all, right? But then yeah, cut back to Nagisa, and she's struggling not to do the same. She's got the glass held right in front of her, and the doll starts charging down the hallway at her. And then we get this really odd animation of the doll's face as well, even before that, as the doll is charging down the hallway, its face comes back into full form because you had the side with the one eye that was like caved in. But it comes back together, and as that happens, the doll's letting out this really weird, creepy gasp. And then, yeah, when it finally makes it to her, it lets out one more of those together forevers, but with like an over the top animation to the face. I don't know that I needed that. I get where they were going with it. They wanted it to be like extra lifelike, but it was a little odd to me. Yeah, it still works, but yeah, a little weird there. And we go from there to a bunch of executives just sitting there in the dark, smoking in this theater, watching the only filmed footage of this film, the footage of Nagisa going down the hallway and then freaking out and starting to run, but just collapsing there where the set ended and having something of a fit. And everybody rushing to her aid, everybody talking into walkie-talkies and everything. And they're watching it without audio too.
Right. Well, and the surviving spouse is there too, watching it.
Yep, she is. And
she sees something in the video.
Yeah, she sees the ghosts of the two children. And I don't know if they were actually caught on film or it's just for her. I like to think it was actually caught on film, and all the executives are freaked out watching this too. And we go from this very, very dark theater to a very, very brightly lit white room. And it's Nagisa in a straitjacket. And yeah, she's probably a little drugged up and everything. And she's kind of collapsed in the corner. Hair's kind of a mess. And we've got the professor's wife. We see her first standing inside the door of the room, but as she was in the 70s, all done up in this super cool dress and everything. And she looks great. And then she disappears, and you see the professor's wife staring through the window of the door at her instead. And she opens up the food tray at the bottom. And I love the way she throws the doll into the room. Just the way it lands and the way her hand is as she releases it. It's like she's finally letting go herself of all of this. And she also throws the little red rubber ball in the room as well. And the ball rolls, and it's the spirit of the little boy picking it up And we get the little girl standing there as well saying together forever. And Nagisa starts having almost a seizure and just this absolute fit, and then sort of calms herself. And we get this slight smile on her face. And I kind of like to think that it's the professor taking over again in some
Yeah,
way.
like I proved my point. I proved my theory kind of smile. That's
Yeah,
what I thought.
exactly. And then
Mhm.
credits and, like a little pop song going on over the credits too. My one complaint about the credits at the very end, they should have had this final little together forever in the creepy doll voice.
Mhm.
But maybe that's too American. I don't know, but I would have loved it. But yeah, that's Reincarnation, man. It's God, what a ride. It's
It's so good. I know I mentioned this to you before, but watching it and prepping for this podcast, there's so many layers that you have to watch it a few times to even appreciate how much is going on that you wouldn't even pick up on your first watch or two of the movie. I mean, they really did a good job of just continuing the layering of is this a dream? Is this a memory? Is this today? Is this the 70s? Like where am I? And it really just layers very quickly. I mean, the movie goes really, really fast. It's just, I don't know, it's got a momentum about it.
Yeah, it's barely
So,
more than an hour and a half, which is usually like the nice sweet spot for a horror film, right?
mhm,
But yeah, and then where a lot of horror films fall apart is the third act. The
mhm,
ones that, they're good, but they could be better. That
mhm,
type of horror film. And this one, everything just comes together in a wonderful way in this final third, this
mhm.
final act. It's good.
It's the best part. It's
Yeah, it
the best part.
really is. I'm so happy you wanted to talk about this film. Kate, any final thoughts about Reincarnation?
Go see it. It's so good.
Yeah, I know you can get it on Apple. There's probably some other places that you can rent it or buy it. I don't know if it's streaming anywhere at the moment, but as far as any streaming services, but there's ways to see this for sure. Um,
Mhm.
if you'd like, where can people find you?
I am on Instagram, to the stars backwards.
As always, as always. Well, thank you again for being on. We'll find something else down the road for sure, because this is always fun to catch up and talk movies. But
Absolutely. It's good to see you.
yeah, good to see you too. But this has been Murders with Mertens, a horror film podcast. Thank you for letting us tickle your ear holes. Please like, share, and subscribe if you are so inclined. I'll be back soon enough with another episode. But until next time, stay spoopy, everyone.